This is the first time ever that we've had all five generations in the workplace. You have the traditionalists, the baby boomers, Gen X, the millennials, which is Y, and we have Gen Z. Gen Z being the lowest number coming in, the top of their age range. And the traditionalists obviously make up only 5% of the workforce exiting out. COVID hits. We're all at home. Gen Z going into the workplace. Guess what? They never physically went to the workplace. Now you fast forward, no more remote work or hybrid. They're required in millennials to go into the office. And I use this example. You must come to work business casual. To them, that means, oh, okay, that's good. I can wear jeans, I can wear shorts. They think it's confusing because no one has told them what that means. Something, a stereotype that I heard for the new generation was all they care about is money, money, money. No, the difference is we all care about money. They're the only one that vocalizing it. So just understanding each other, understanding the generation, understanding their background, and then try to find a way, and every organization have an opportunity on how do we work together. Once we understand, how do we communicate?
All right, guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the HR Heroes podcast. I'm incredibly excited today because I have Karen Coleman with me. Karen, thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So, I like to open up with a human-centric question. So, Karen, how is your heart doing today?
My heart is full, energetic, pumpy, and grateful.
What kind of things are you grateful for today?
This morning, I was grateful for the coffee that I had first thing this morning to get me through the day. But I'm grateful for the little things. I'm grateful for family, friends, colleagues, work, opportunities, the sun. So I'm grateful for a lot. That this could be a whole segment just on my gratefulness.
Well, I love that because sometimes when we focus on the small things, it makes everything else so much more enjoyable. And, one of the things that we kind of do here on the podcast is we connect our previous guest with you by asking you a question that was posed by our previous guest. And their question was, in the landscape of HR, what challenges are you facing in properly mobilizing and optimizing your current talent? And I'll give a little context to that. She was talking about a lot of different HR leaders are looking for new talent. They want to reorg and reface the talent that they have. But often they don't look at mobilizing and optimizing the talent that they do have. So why do you think that's such a problem?
I think it goes to the first thing we do as organizations, and not necessarily HR people in general, just organizations in general. As soon as we see, wait, that something's not fitting, the circle is not fitting in the square, that's it. We need to get new talent. What we need to do is reskill the talent we have. We either need to invest in the talent we have through leadership development, mentorship, whatever that looks like. We need to do more of a development plan for our existing talent. And I believe that everyone brings something to the table. I truly believe that. And sometimes we make the hiring decisions we make means that that person may not be the perfect fit for that role, but they may be a fit for another role. And we don't look at that. We immediately say they're not working out. Let's move on and let's bring in someone who fits this. Or no, let's reskill what we have and put that person on where they're strong at. I really believe in that.
I feel like that's human nature to always think that grass is greener on the other side, rather than recognizing what we have and having gratitude for the team members we have, but just reinvesting into them to get the most out of them as an individual.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that. I believe in individuals, and I believe in bringing the best out of individuals.
Well, speaking of bringing the best out of individuals, in our previous conversation, we talked about your passion for the arts and your love for poetry. So I want to take a little bit of a different stance here by reading something to you. The pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We real cool we, left school we, lurk late we, strike straight we, sing sin we, thin gin we, jazz June we, die soon. Whose poem is that?
Wow, that sounds like a Gwendolyn Brooks poem.
That is Gwendolyn Brooks. So my question for you is, why is that individual so impactful in your life? And how did you actually meet that individual?
So I'll go back and then come forward to the second part of the question because it'll be full circle. I was young, I was in high school, and I had a gift of art and I had a gift of writing. And I had an English teacher named Miss McClendon, and I have to say her name because she changed my life. So she kept telling me, "You have this gift. You have this gift." I hid it. I never let anyone know that I had these gifts. It was her that brought it out to me, and I brought it out in me. And the way she did that was Gwendolyn Brooks was, and I don't remember where we were, but it was a library. Yeah, I definitely remember that. And you had to be invited to see her because at this time she's this famous poet. So no one could just walk in there. So my English teacher said, "I want to take you somewhere." And she snuck me in the back door. And so I'm sitting among everyone else. No one knows I'm not supposed to be there. And then she introduced me to Gwendolyn Brooks. I happened to have poetry with me because I carried a journal. I let her read it, and she took me under her wing. And we bonded, we developed this relationship. I would send her poetry. She would like grade it like a teacher. And I was really, really shy and quiet. No one believes that right now. And I remember her telling me that you're going to have to come out that shell because you're going to have to tell your story because no one can tell your story but you. And so and she told me the other thing, the second thing I remember, she told me always write what's real. And that's what I love about her. One, she impacted me as a person and a character to come out this shy shell that I was in. And two, she helped me to realize that everyone, this is why I love HR so much, everyone's different, everyone's unique, and we should use that. And she brought me out of this quietness and have me tell the world, yes, I'm a writer. Yes, I'm an artist. I wasn't shy anymore. I wasn't embarrassed by it anymore.
I feel like that story is so inspirational because we have those early experiences in life that show us that we can be something greater. And when it comes from somebody who is famous in the moment, but also rings her voice through time with the beautiful poem like I just read, is something that's so cool that you can kind of continue to go back onto from your memory bank and think about how those little micro moments fostered a relationship and gave you the opportunity to come out of your shell. And I feel like that's a huge part of leadership today as well, especially in this new world we're kind of working in. Being able to bring the most out of our team members is such a superpower.
I agree with that. I agree that that's why I went in HR. That's
So
exactly
let's
what.
kind of talk about your journey into HR because I know you've worked with some amazing organizations and I know that your journey was something that you kind of had to find and navigate. So let's kind of give everybody an understanding of your career path.
Yeah, the interesting part, I did not set out, and all HR people probably say this, but I didn't set out to go into HR. I didn't even know what human resources was as a teenager. My undergrad is in graphic design, the arts, because I wanted to be this great designer, live in Paris, speak French, design clothes, and I wanted to make money doing it. And so I went in graphic design. While I was in school, I took a job at a manufacturing plant. And I have a long history, and I'm not going to bore you with the long history, but what I will tell you is while I was in school, the plant manager at the time said, "Hey, we want to hire you." I was a temp, and they hired me. And then the HR manager said, "Well, if you're going to hire her, you're going to share her." So I was split between the plant manager and the HR manager. Fast forward, I don't even know if it was a month or 2 months or what it was. I'm in grad school now, and the HR manager leaves. Not only does the HR manager leaves, the director of HR leaves. Here I am, I'm working for this plan. The entire organization was 20,000 employees. The facility I was at was 55, unionized. And they said, "Here you go, you're now HR." Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. So I just started to go to grad school for HR, human resource management. And what I would do is whatever course I had, I would align it with what was happening at work. So when we were negotiating a union contract, I took my labor relation class. when they gave me a project of taking this organization to self-directed work teams, I took my change management class. So depending on what was happening at work is what I took, and that's how I learned the HR, just class and doing at the same time. So
What an
that's my
amazing
story.
opportunity.
Yeah, that's my HR story. What I did find though in doing that is I had a passion for a piece of HR, even though I do all things HR. I've been doing it for now going on 30 years. um, that's when I realized I love developing people. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're strong at employee relations." I don't think it's more of employee relations or developing people. I think I genuinely just care about human beings.
Before there was HR and before there was things like DE&I, there were human beings who cared. And I
Exactly.
find that that sweet spot, if you will, that we can find in being a people person, investing into others, getting the most out of them that helps drive business is an amazing place to be in, especially in today's world, because business is changing more so than ever. Everybody has different priorities. There are so many different generations in the workforce now, and
Mm.
being able to connect and empathize with each generation is a superpower. And I know that one of the things that you're putting a lot of work into right now is the different generations in work. So why don't you kind of break down what's happening across the work landscape and how different generations are kind of interacting together?
Yeah, the interesting part, what a lot of people may not or they may realize is we have five generations at work right now. And this is the first time ever that we've had all five generations in the workplace. You have the traditionalists, the baby boomers, Gen X, the millennials, which is Y, and we have Gen Z. Gen Z being the lowest number coming in, the top of their age range. And the traditionalists obviously only about make up only 5% of the workforce exiting out. But what you have is five different generations, five different cultures, five different communication styles, five different eras of what they grew up in. I'll give you an example, and I'll use the millennial and the Gen Z as an example. COVID hits. We're all at home. Gen Z going into the workplace. Guess what? They never physically went to the workplace. Now you fast forward, no more remote work or hybrid. They're required in millennials to go into the office. And I use this example. You must come to work business casual. To them, that means, oh, okay, that's good. I can wear jeans, I can wear shorts. They think it's confusing because no one has told them what that means. And traditionalists will say, what is this business casual? No, it's suit and tie. And it's all because of what happened in their lifetime at that point. If you look at the new generation, they say the older generation don't want to change, but they have to realize, and they don't realize the older generation is saying the new generation they're lazy. They want everything given to them. That's not the case. They're changing the landscape of organizations. And what we need to do is learn how we can fill the gap of this multi generation in the workplace, the communication era, and understand it first, and then put them on teams together. Let them mentor each other. I share with organizations, have a mentorship program that's reverse, where the younger generation is mentoring the old generation and vice versa. We automatically think that the older generation should mentor, and that's not necessarily true. This young generation, they introduced us to the World Wide Web, friends across the country, where I would say, oh, I'm going to have dinner with my girlfriend down the street. They're like, I'm going online to meet my friend in China. So it's just a whole different landscape that we have to understand that they're not lazy. And something a stereotype that I heard for the new generation was all they care about is money, money, money. No, the difference is we all care about money. They're the only one that vocalizing it. So just understanding each other, understanding the generation, understanding their background, and then try to find a way in every organization have an opportunity of how do we work together once we understand how do we communicate.
What a unique time for leaders to be in a position to have to be nimble, flexible, and curious enough to meet all of these generations. Because we talk about the employees who are coming from five different generations. But imagine if you were a Gen X or a boomer who's now having to reach above you to the traditionalists and reach below you to connect with all of the Gen Z. So what are some of the, I would say, key leadership styles or attributes that leaders today need to start developing in order to be successful at, I would say, crossing that gigantic chasm of those 5 generations?
So, first thing I'm gonna say is training. I'm gonna say training for a reason because I believe because that's where um, I focus. That's what I focus on with leaders when I train them on this very topic is inclusive leadership. So, what is inclusive leadership? Inclusive leadership is understanding your leadership style, understanding your biases or unbiases for that matter. Once you're clear about who you are as a leader, then you need to understand the people that's working on your team. When you do that, when because we don't want to say that we don't know something as leaders. We don't want to say, oh no, we this is the leadership style. This is the way I lead, and this is how they should react to me leading, or this is the way they should accept me leading. Because we communicate the way we think that everyone should communicate, and that's not necessarily the case. We have to understand individuals are different, and we have to understand what's their motivation at work. How do they like to communicate? Something I share with leaders in the beginning when you have a new hire. That's the perfect opportunity to find out what motivates them, how they like to be communicated. Get to know them. Get to know them so that not only do you understand them and you can communicate and you can lead them, and then we'll talk about performance, which is a whole nother discussion. Coach them, mentor them, talk to them, know their personal selves, know them as an individual. Then you can lead them. And I will tell you this: when a person feels safe at work, when they feel like they belong there, they will take risk. They will jump on project. They will work hard. They will work smart. They will do all things you need them to do because they know that you respect them, you understand them, and you're giving them a platform where they can take risk at work.
And that's a dynamic shift in leadership. This is on the front of my mind right now because I recently listened to a podcast with Deion Sanders, the head coach at the University of Colorado football team. And the question came up in the podcast, how do you manage the different personalities of your team? Because you have some rock stars, you have some other people who are motivated differently. And so do you come at everybody the same way? And he said, absolutely not. One thing that I do is I try and observe and spend time with my team so I can understand, how do I motivate number 16? Do I need to yell at him? Because he might respond to that, but another team member might not. I just need to give him a look. Or maybe I need to have a conversation with them in quiet and say, hey, listen, you're not performing how you should be. And that was one of the first examples that I've heard somebody articulate from a leadership position of why it's important to truly understand your team members so you can have your unique leadership style in trying to motivate them and get the most out of them. And hearing you talk about that just brings up all of these memories of listening to that conversation and seeing one of the greatest NFL players of all times, but also one of the greatest leaders that I've been able to witness talk about why that stuff is so important.
Yes, and if I could give you, I can give you one sentence to describe that. That sentence is meet them where they are. Every individual, again, is different. They're motivated differently. They communicate different. So I'm going to meet you where you are as an individual to help you get where we need you to go. And that's what I tell leaders. I'm going to go back to generation. I'm a Generation X. They say Generation X love Texas. Text on the phone. I hate text. Absolutely hate text. So in order to meet me where I am, you one have to understand where I am within my generation, what I grew up on. We were the latchkey kids. So Generation X are more independent. We didn't have parents to come home to. We had to take care of ourselves. So understanding that, then you'll understand, okay, what motivates her? Well, we know text isn't my form of communication. But in order for you to know that, you have to talk to me and you have to ask me that. And you have to meet me where I am because if I'm going to have a performance discussion, you have to know what motivates me and you have to know how can you mentor me in order to have that discussion. And that's what all leaders need to do, need to meet people where they are.
One of the things that I think about a lot recently because of these conversations on the podcast is the skill deficit that a lot of Gen Z and alpha are going to have, because it came from a school system that was completely different to our lived experience. 3 years virtual, 3 years without that interaction. We kind of touched on this in the beginning of our conversation. So why do you think Gen Z, as an example, and millennials have such a different expectation for the role that work plays in their lives on the other side of the pandemic? Why is it so prominent now? Was it the catalyst of the pandemic that gave us the awareness, or what do you think happened?
I think the pandemic just highlighted it. I don't think that it has changed of how they think, what they think, how they want to work. I really don't think it changed. I think where the pandemic did change was the social skills, meaning that my generation, I went on prom, I had graduation, I had all the fun stuff. They didn't have that. A lot of them had to miss all that. So that social skill or that social interaction, I should say, that the pandemic kind of changed that. But what I really think is that the millennials, Generation Z, and even the alphas coming up, their learning is different. So where again, prior to millennials, traditional is baby boomers X. We grew up on telephones with the cord out the wall and typewriters. And I even the way they teach in school, where when you're typing, how you always have after your period, you have two spaces before you start. And I remember a millennial say, you don't have to do that. Computers automatically do that. That doesn't exist anymore. So I think that was before the pandemic. I think the pandemic didn't change it. I think the social interaction, because the new generations, they're growing up in a world of technology. I mean, they're seeing the first car drive itself. I mean, we're seeing AI. My generation, we didn't see that. We saw typewriters where you put the paper in and you slide it and you start typing. The only beauty with X is we were introduced to the computer, so it's a little easier. But baby boomers, it's profound for them to see a car driving itself, or you go to the grocery store and you're watching the robot stocking the shelves. So they're growing up on this. They have the friends across seas. So I don't think the pandemic has changed that for them. I really don't. I think it's just who they are and what they're growing up in this time, in this time of in the world and the economy.
I feel like this generation that we're talking about right now has a superpower, and that is twofold. It's agility, and the other is adaptability. And so when we think about how quickly time moves, I was born in 1990, and so I still remember the before times when the desktop computer first came into the house. We had the floppy disks and the hard disk that you put into the computer, and then
Good time.
technology seems to run away from technology seems to be running away from us. But
Mhm.
as we see this new generation who's coming into the life experience, they're being constantly forced to be adaptable and agile to be able to adjust to different situations. And so when we think about all of their life experiences, the pandemic, having to come into the workforce, AI, technology, autonomous cars, this seems very much kind of their natural temperament for the world. Things are always going to be shifting and shaping. And so
Mhm.
why wouldn't work be the same way? I guess it's really kind of a responsibility of the leaders to really kind of think about initiatives like DE&I for
Mhm.
diversity of thought, diversity of background and lived experience, to be able to nurture this generation as they come in, to be
Mhm.
flexible and curious enough to be able to meet everybody where they're needing to be met, which I think is a really awesome opportunity for great leaders.
Absolutely, and something you touched on this, but something you missed as well. To add to that, I should say, millennials. If you think about it, they came through the time of 9/11.
Hmm.
So they're seeing now wars. They're seeing school shootings. They're coming up through, and you said the agility. They're resilient,
Yep.
and so they're coming up through a time where they not only will they have to adapt, but they're going to be great adapting because of everything that they and each generation have had their own, but just the newer generations they have to be a lot more resilient during this time and the stage and in the workplace. Which the beauty of that too is they're teaching us that, and they're teaching us how to do that as well.
Also teaching other generations how to vocalize when they feel like they're not being taught and or being treated properly. Because
Yeah.
when you brought up 9/11, I remember being in 5th grade. and seeing the
Mhm.
TV of everything that happened. Then a couple years later, I remember the Great Recession in 2009 or 2008, when the factories, as an example, pulled out of Michigan. I watched the economy collapse. And then years later, it's another thing. And then years later, it's another thing. And so I think about, it's easy to point fingers at a generation and say, you guys, or you would have, or you should have. But I feel
Mhm.
like at the basis of it, I feel like as a society, we need to get better at not judging each other. The
Yes.
judgment of being so quick to say and point fingers is something that I feel like we've gotten really comfortable with. But I feel like if we eliminate that, we could be a lot more harmonious and a lot less divided in our society as well.
Yeah, that's why I go back to we have to understand each other and communicate. Because if you really look at every single generation, we all bring something different. If you look at the traditionalists and the traditionalists, they went through World War II. What was on their mind is loyalty. They wanted to go to the service. They wanted to fight for their country. That's what's big to them, and I respect that. And then World War II is over, and here come baby boomers saying, "Economy is back." Now the jobs that they had with making weapons has turned to cars, or manufacturing, or consumer goods, and they're like, "I can feed my family. All I want is a house." And then you go to the X, well, independence again. And I mean, you learn to be millennials saying, "Oh, I don't have to go around the corner down the street. I can go right on the computer to do this. Let me show you how." And I call my son's a millennial. I call him all the time. "How do I do this? What do you think of this?" I bounce things off him. I'm learning from him because his thought process is so diverse and different than mine. And we just sit on the phone for hours and just bounce things off each other. And then Z will be some totally what Z is teaching us is all the communication we lost, where millennials are more like, "I want a performance review, but do we have to do it so often? Or can we do it on video?" The new generation, Z, is saying, "I want it often and constant. Tell me how I'm doing. Tell me how to grow." They want to know. So as leaders, we have to look at all generations, appreciate all generations, learn from all generations. That's why I said, put them all on a project together. Imagine the outcome of that project would
The
be
transference
phenomenal.
of knowledge.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I would love to be on that team. Sign me up.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's once again, it comes back to if you're in the same room together, there's so many opportunities that get blossomed and cultivated by just being able to share ideas and different perspectives. And that's honestly one of the things that I have been thinking about a lot recently is because my business in itself is remote. We've got team members all over the United States, basically. I really wish there was an opportunity for us to be in the same room together because this virtual lifestyle of communicating over Zoom and Slack and all this other type of stuff of email is great from an efficiency perspective, but still I do wish that I wish. I wish there was a time where I could have spent time in an office with some people because I never really had that experience in my professional development. And I feel like maybe the pendulum is swinging back that way because a lot of the digital natives are asking for that human connection. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
you kind of see that with the different organizations you work with as well.
I do. I actually see that. So in twofold, what you miss by not being in the office is that human connection. Some of your best friends you're going to meet is going to be at work. And I can tell you some of my best times were after work. My colleagues and I would go to try and I remember one organization every Friday we would get off work and try a new restaurant. And to this day, we're close friends. And those are the times, and I was talking to a colleague of mine, I haven't worked with him for like 10 years. And we were talking about those memories and how wonderful those times were. And now we're all spread apart and we're all at home and we can't see each other. So there's something to be said for that, especially if you're and I don't know if you know disc profile, but if you're high I, you need that social skill. And I'm a high I, so I need that social skill. So in order for me to get it, I leave the house and I go meet somewhere to get that connection. Where the new generation, they haven't had a chance to do that. But I think that the Z, I think they, even though they want to work remote, I think they're going to want more of that. I really do.
It's interesting to think about how patterns somewhat repeat themselves. I think
Yes.
about there's going to be a day in the future where offices talk about you want to work for us because we have a actual brick and mortar location where you can come and spend time with each other. And then people from previous generations are going to saying, wait, didn't you guys want to get away from this? You know what I mean? It's interesting how these patterns kind of repeat themselves. Um, yeah, it's just a very interesting time to be a business leader because there are so many different perspectives from a generational perspective of how we want to work, the expectations that we have, the things that we want to accomplish. One interesting topic of discussion that I'd like to kind of dive into a little bit is the idea of work-life balance. I've been
Mhm.
messing around with an idea of myself in my own mind of work-life integration because me being a Libra, it's very difficult for me to find balance in work because I'm very passionate about what I do. And so
Yeah.
I'm really trying to create the mental faculties and framework of trying to say, my life outside of work is integrated into work and my work is integrated into my outside life of work as well. It's just an interesting thing that I'm battling with. So how do you kind of approach the work-life balance or work-life integration idea?
So I like the wording of work life integration because I don't believe that my definition of work life balance and organization's definition of work life balance is consistent. Where organizations feel work life balance means I'll have a ping pong table in a room, or I'll have dry cleaners coming to your house, or we'll have a way for you to take your kids to daycare. We'll pay for it, and you can come to work while we do that. That's not work life balance. And I think that's why I like your framing of work life integration. And so I do this thing. What do your future dream state look like, or what do your dream life looks like? And when you look at your dream life from a personal standpoint, a professional standpoint, I list it out. What does it look like? So we know, as you mentioned earlier, I'm an artist. I'm a writer. So HR is a part of me. It's only a piece of me. It's not the whole me. My family and personal life is a part of me. It's not the whole me. Art and writing is a part of me. So somehow in my life, I have to integrate all three of those pieces. So how do I do that? And it's so interesting. I can't tell you it's easy because sometimes your work that you do, even though you love it and you're passionate about it, you can't tear yourself away from it. You have to, if depending on what your like yours may be different from mine. I have to have some type of artistic outlet, and so I have to paint. I have to paint something. And the beauty of what I do, especially from a training and development standpoint, as I mentioned, my undergrad's in graphic design, and everyone said, "How do you have a master's in HR and a bachelor's in graphic design?" I combine them. So when you're creating training classes, it's about the look and the feel of the presentation, the interaction, the LMS, or whatever it is. So it visually has to be appealing. Well, if I do that, I literally just touch every part of me except my family. I just touch the artistic side of me and the HR side of me. So that's like 90 or 80, I would say 80. I'll let my family hear me say 90. But it's like 80% there if you do the three quarters. So you almost have the whole me. My livelihood, 100% of me, it's not work, it's not art, it's not family. It's the whole me. And that's what leaders have to remember. You have to manage the whole person and be creative. And I think where we can challenge HR folks, be creative in the policies. Be creative, and I'm going to tie generations and everything together, even though we're talking about work life balance. When I talk about policies, is that I gave this example to our organization. When you look at the generations and the cultures in your workplace, you have a bereavement policy, and most bereavement policy says immediate family, mother, father, sister, brother, right, or step family. Well, in some cultures, your immediate family are your aunts, your uncle, and your grandparents who raised you.
Yeah.
Be creative. And so, going back to your question, hopefully I answered it. For me, I have good work life balance because I make sure I touch. First, you have to know who you are and what you like and what your ideal life looks like. And then I make sure I do something of every single part of that every day. And sometimes you intermingle it.
Yeah. Have you gone through seasons where certain aspects of you have to be sacrificed in order for you to make progress in other areas? Because I think about the analogy of if we have 100% of our effort, we can only face it in 10 directions, meaning we're putting 10% of our effort in each direction. It's very difficult to grow in all directions at the same time. So have you gone through those seasons of, I would say, sacrifice or change or just kind of prioritization?
Yes. I mean, one, you have to prioritize depending on what's happening at work. So we know some things you have to meet deadlines. And so this is interesting with me. I use both sides of my brain. I know that's kind of strange, but I do. And I cannot, so if I'm working in, let's say I'm doing employee relations, some legal training compliance, well, obviously that's more stringent and structured. So of course I'm not creative. I read law books. I'm looking at laws. I'm not creative. So that's on hold. And I make sure I separate the two. The only time I combine it is something like training. When I'm creating, painting, writing, doing something else, I'm not working. And a habit I have given myself is I put time on my calendar every day to walk away from my desk.
Mm.
And because I used to work 16, 17 hours, no lunch, no break, straight through. And so but what happens, you get burnt out that way. And I have been burnt out that way. And I've stopped breathing at work that way. So now I make a point to put self care first. So I put time on my calendar. I literally make sure I take that time. And I may take a walk. I may go write. I remember once I was at work and I didn't feel like doing HR work. So I took a break and I wrote a poem called I Want to Paint. I didn't want to work. I wanted to do something creative. I wanted to paint. And so I walked away and wrote a poem called I Want to Paint. So it was a way to get me. And once I did that, I was good. And I went back to work.
I feel like that's a beautiful way to be able to feed our soul at the same time. Because one of the things that I think about is, like we've talked about today, is work life looks very different for a lot of us. And I feel like that integration word is really important to find that balance, even though it's not the balance, but it's your individual balance of it could be 60, it could be 40, it could be 70-30, or vice versa. And sometimes having the ability to disconnect is super important because I think about some of the times when I've felt burnt out. It feels like I can't see the end in sight. And I feel like that's kind of an effect of not having efficacy and realizing the work that I'm doing today is kind of going towards the bigger goal. One of the interesting things that I do actually is I have a program on my computer called Notion, and I actually record like 16 pieces of data each day. What was my sleep score? What time did I go to bed? What did I eat for lunch? And one thing I've recognized over the last like 6-8 months is I can see based on the data of when I'm not being true to myself. Did I work out? Did I walk my dog? Did I reach out to my girlfriend? Did I do these things? And I start to see patterns in the little output that it puts out to say, I wasn't feeling like myself. And sometimes going back to be able to recognize those patterns is super important. But it's been super helpful for me. It seems kind of nerdy and geeky, but I'm just really interested in kind of optimizing my life and recognizing those patterns, if you will.
I keep a journal. So I have a journal, again, Future Dreams State. And every day I write three things in this journal. Gratitude, what I'm grateful for. We started off that way. And I write three of each. What I'm grateful for. Two, what am I celebrating, big or small? And three, a brag book. And I encourage people to do this. I just did it. And after 30 days, I went back and read what I wrote over the last 30 days. And it changes you. I'm telling you, it's a game changer. It makes you, it does a few things. One is you celebrate the small wins and the big wins. And I share it with someone that reports to me about the brag book. It reminds you of who you are. It reminds you of what you can do. It reminds you of self. It reminds you of your strength. So I love that. And then the gratitude makes you appreciate, even during the bad times, the tough times, the ups and downs, it makes you appreciate everything in front of you. And what all three of them do, it gives you another day to do something even greater.
And one of the things I think about in that simple example, gratitude, the brag book, you're building momentum. And so when you
Yes.
go back and say, I'm not having a great day, you have hard evidence proof that you've documented that says, look at all of the great things that are going on. And I feel like that in itself is just so beautiful.
Yeah, and you're shifting your mindset. You have a cup, and someone told me this example of oil and water. So if you put water in a cup, you have a cup, and you put oil in it, water being positive, oil being negative, the oil sits on top. But if you pour more water in that cup, the positive, that negative leaks itself out. And then you have nothing but a cup full of positive energy. So it's a mindset shift that works as well.
That's just so beautiful. You know, Karen, I can't say how much I've enjoyed this conversation. Seriously, it's been so cool to hear about your practical approaches to being positive, to shifting your mindset, talking about the different generations, because I know so many people are dealing with a lot of the challenges. One of the things that sticks out to my mind when we started our conversation, I asked you the question about why we look to bring in new team members instead of investing into our own. And you talking about investing into our team and reskilling them so they can continue to grow is something that I'm going to continue to keep with me for a long time. And I just want to say thank you for dropping that plus so many other golden nuggets into this conversation for me and everybody else today. It's been an absolute blast.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you again. I can talk about individuals all day long because that's what I
Well,
do. Right?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of amazing things about you, and I'm so glad that we were able to share your passion for poetry, your passion for, design and everything else that you've done. Because everybody who's watching this episode, I know that you have the dream that you still will accomplish of going to Paris and living there as well. And so we didn't get a chance to talk about that, but I know it's an amazing part of you and the whole human who you are, and I'm just really glad to be able to kind of share the space with you because it's been an amazing conversation with me today.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, as we kind of wrap here today, I would like to give you the opportunity to pose a question to our next guest on the podcast. What would you like to ask them?
I had a couple circling, but I think where I landed, because we talked about DIB, we talked about belonging. And I think one thing that most organizations forget is about the HR folks. The HR folks that has the balance. Our job is to protect the company from the employees and the employees from the company. That's our job. But what happens when we're that middle person and no one thinks about us? I would ask HR folks, what do they do? And twofold. One is, what do they see as changing in organizations right now? From their standpoint, from HR standpoint, it's different today. But what are they seeing? And then how are they managing their own selves and not getting burned out? And how are they continuing to move the organization forward? Those are my three questions.
That's beautiful. Well, I'm excited to be able to connect you with our next guest and hear their answers to those amazing questions as well. Once again, Karen, thank you so much for coming on the HR Heroes podcast. It's been an absolute blast. That's a
Thank
wrap.
you. I appreciate it, Keenan.